Many of you know that I am the founder and CEO of the Burnt Chef Project, which has now been going for 6 years and operates in over 184 countries globally, providing free therapy, free education, and college talks now to many different continents. But a lot of you are thinking, well, how did I get to this point? And it's a really interesting story. At least it's interesting to me because everything has an origin story, right? Hospitality is all around stories. So I'm going to take you back. I used to work in bars and nightclubs in Bournemouth. And looking back now, it's always something really interesting that happened to me. Before my shift, I used to get the worst stomach cramps possible. And it used to stop me from going to work and turning up on time. When I turned up, my boss used to go to me, "Why are you late?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't feel well." He's like, "Poor excuse, be here on time." For every single shift, I would have the same stomach cramps time and time again. Now, it wasn't until I left that role, where I was working from 6 at night through to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, that I realized it was stress that was causing that. That was my first experience of stress in hospitality. Fast forward about 10 years after that, I started supplying chefs with fine dining ingredients. I also started experiencing mental health issues myself. And for a long time, I didn't realize that there was help available. And quite frankly, I was scared as shit to go and get help. I remember booking a therapist miles away from my work and my home to make sure that no one had followed me there. I even remember looking around the corner before I went into the therapist's office to make sure that I hadn't been followed in. Now, it took me about 2 years to get recovery. I was in a very dark place. I was very alone and isolated. And I came back into the hospitality industry and started looking at my clients, my friends, my colleagues within this sector, and started trying to open up dialogue. But back then, every single time I tried to speak to someone about mental health, they said, "You just have to man up, get on with it. We don't talk about that because we might lose our jobs." It's not the done thing. The less we say, the less it exists. But that wasn't true. We lost friends. People died by suicide. People's lives were being impacted by addiction, by divorce. People were leaving the sector at a much earlier age because there was no work-life balance. We were starting to see the real impacts of an industry imploding on itself because at the very, very foundational level, we were not talking about mental health, emotional intelligence, and other important subjects such as leadership, menopause, bullying, communication, and a whole lot more. Diversity and inclusion, for example. So the Burnt Chef Project was started from an initial idea that I had whilst talking to my friend Pete, who was working in a kitchen, and on the back of a little receipt, I drew a silhouette of an individual. And I said, what happens if I was to take a picture where half of you is shaded, half of you is in light, to show that there's more going on behind the scenes than you might think. At first, he didn't want me to take the photo. He didn't want his name associated with mental health. And that was a story that I kept hearing time and time again. I'll have my photo taken, but I won't post it because it's to do with mental health and I don't want to be the one in the firing line. But I'm pleased to say that those photos eventually got posted. And what happened after that was a cascading effect. Individuals from all over the sector, front of house, back of house, often going in during the slap bang in the middle of service to take photos of sometimes 10, 20, 30 people at a time. Each of those with a unique story about their time in hospitality, some positive, some not so positive. Individuals who have been impacted by loss, who have been impacted by poor leadership or by addiction. Also individuals telling us how great hospitality was. Someone coming from tech, working in hospitality as a chef and saying how it's improved their mental health and well-being and gave them something to focus on in terms of creativity and skill set. But I knew at that point that there was a big gap. These stories were coming through thick and thin, and someone needed to stand here to try and help support these individuals who are struggling and tell the positive stories of those who are doing it right and getting it right. And thus the idea of the Burnt Chef Project was formed. That was back in May 2019. Here we are in April 2025, almost 6 years on, and I'm pleased to say that we have become that organisation.